Hey everyone, so I've been dying to get this monitor in. This is the M27Q HD by Gigabyte. I have one in already, but I've been waiting to get my other one set up. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm going to be streaming on Twitch, and it's best when you have multiple monitors doing so. So I wanted to cover this one with you guys for a bit. There's a lot to get into when we're talking about monitors. I don't think I'm going to cover everything. There's tons of video out there on some of the stuff, but I will delve into a little bit of each topic for you guys. So let's get into it.
When opening the box, you want to make sure that the words pull face up. The monitor is on the bottom of this so that when you pull it out, all the accessories will be on top instead of pulling it out the other way where everything will fall out on the bottom. You also want to make sure that that handle underneath doesn't keep catching the styrofoam part. Otherwise, it's going to keep yanking pieces off or getting stuck. We have all the peripherals and mounting plate on this side. This is a USB 3 interface cable to connect the monitor. We also have the very thin instruction manual, which we'll throw over there. Next, we have the mounting plate. Now, the mounting plate is very sturdy but thin. It's a metal piece with a plastic top on it. The extra cables included, not necessarily in order, are Type I, Type J, and Type B power connectors, as well as a DisplayPort cable and an HDMI cable as well. Now, after all the cables are removed, slide the top half of the styrofoam off, which will reveal the monitor with the neck mount already on there, secured by another piece of styrofoam. We will be removing that neck at some point because we're going to use a VESA mount to mount it to an arm on the desk.
And we're back. So I wanted to bring it up here because this monitor is, as I said, 27-inch. It's actually the same monitor as right here. So I'm not necessarily going to use this for what I'm going to be talking about because I want to mount it on my other arm over here, which is going to take a little bit of work. So for reference, we're going to use the display that's already connected, and I'll show you the completed setup at the end of the video. Y'all have to forgive me, my camera died during the last piece I was doing. So what I was saying here is to be able to show you the ports on here right now. So let's get in on this a little bit. Let me make sure I'm in the shot. Sorry. All right, good enough. So we have two USB 3s, the USB 3 interface for the computer. There's a USB-C on here, which is really nice. You have your DisplayPort and two HDMI ports. So you have a lot of connectors, but the reason for having all these connectors is because there's a built-in KVM switch on this monitor. And for those of you who don't know what a KVM switch is, it allows you to control multiple computers or a computer and a laptop from one display. Say you have one keyboard, one mouse, but you have a laptop and you have a desktop computer. Well, what you can do is connect your keyboard and your mouse to those USB 3 ports in the monitor, connect your display or your HDMI from each of those computers, and then you can switch back and forth between the two devices, allowing this monitor and your existing keyboard and mouse to control either one without having to disconnect and plug in the other computer and disconnect and plug in. That's what the KVM switch is for. Now, when we're talking about this monitor, this is a 1440p monitor. It's meaning that it's 1440 pixels vertical by 2560 pixels horizontal. So when you hear 1440p or 1080p or 720p, it's talking about that vertical. The other half is usually the higher number. So 1080p would be 1920 by 1080. And I forget what the one is at 720, so you have to, well, ignore that one. But QHD is talking about quad high definition. And what that means is it's 4 times the 720p display. Now, even though it's 4 times, we're not talking 4K, because 4K is another animal altogether. 4K is more 3800 and change pixels. 2560 is, some people consider it 4K, but it's more looking at it as it's 4 times the 720p. So you're still going to get a crazy nice picture, but 4K is still higher in resolution in pixels per inch. So when looking at monitors, there's an IPS display, which this one is an IPS edge display. There's also a TN display and a VA display. Now, I'll give you a little bit of rundown on that shortly, but we're going to talk about this one for now. It's an edge design display, meaning that the LEDs are around the very edge of the display. Now, a lot of you, most of you have heard of like backlit displays and so forth. This one is just an edge lit display. So all the pixels are at the very edge of the display, whereas backlit has an entire grid of pixels. I'm going to throw up a quick picture chart so you can see what I'm talking about, edge versus full backlit.
When looking at the display, you can see there's a slight gray to white around the edge, and that's because it's pushing the waves of light to the center of the screen via channels.
There's pros and cons to each one of these. There's a lot to go into deciding on a monitor. Type of panel you have, resolution, refresh rate, response time, and all of these things can get really crazy and confusing for a lot of people. I'm just going to talk about this one, and the reason I chose it not only for all of that, but also cost. It's around $300 and change for this monitor. I think it went up a little bit recently. It's like $340. A lot of these panels, when you start to get to 27-inch, they become a curved design, because as the panel gets larger, it's harder to see the edges, so they give you that curve, which if you're just using that one display, it helps because you're bringing the edges closer to you in that curved design. Now, I was talking about the displays before. I mentioned that there's an IPS display, which this one is an IPS. There's a TN display, and then there's a VA display. Now, those terms each reflect different kinds of displays and how the liquid crystals or the diodes, how they're treated inside to bring you the color changes and the lighting and so forth. IPS stands for in-plane switching, meaning it's a plane of crystals. VA is vertical alignment, and TN is twisted pneumatic. So each one of those terms kind of gives you an idea of what's happening to the crystals in the display as it's being electrically charged to bring you your picture or the color changes and so forth. So they each have benefits, they each have negatives. It's all dependent on what you're looking for, what you're using your displays for. That I'll leave it up to you guys. If you want to go into looking, if you're looking to buy a new display or something, I'll leave that up to you to do your research. I've done countless hours on it, so I'm just kind of giving you the quick rundown on things. IPS by far are the best for viewing angles. So if you're getting larger displays and you want, if it's off to the side of you and you want to be able to see it at a certain angle, the IPS display is definitely going to be the way to go when it comes to your viewing angles. The other two things to talk about when choosing a monitor is the monitor's refresh rate and its response time. Now, refresh rate talks about the number of times the image refreshes per second. So if you see something that says 60 FPS, 75 FPS, 144 FPS, it's talking about the number of times per second the frame will refresh, so FPS frames per second. When we're talking about response times are the amount of time it takes for a pixel to go from black to white to black again, or gray to gray. And what that means is you're going from the pixel being off to being full brightness or full color back to off again, how fast it can do that. And that's usually measured in milliseconds. So 4, 5, 6, 7 milliseconds. The lower the number, the better. And if you have like a 7, 8 millisecond response time, you can really see ghosting of the image. And if you're not sure what that is, if you looking at this on a computer, if you just drag a window around, or if you drag your mouse, you can see those trails. That's called ghosting. So the millisecond response times is where you see less of it. If it's very fast, you don't see as much of a jitter or ghosting of the trail of either the window or the mouse or whatnot. So that's where millisecond response times come in. Those are the other two factors to look into when you're getting a monitor, depending on what you're using it for. As far as refresh rate and resolution and the features that are offered, the KVM switch is nice. You know, I do have a laptop that I may hook up to one of these so that I can have that running while I'm running something else. They're the features for me personally, I think is very beneficial. Now, definitely do your research if you're gonna look into getting an upgrade, but for the contrast that you get on this, like I said, the resolution, the refresh rate, all of that, it works for, you know, graphic designers, 3D animators, anybody doing, you know, photo retouching out of the box without doing much changes to the configuration. I did lower the brightness a little bit because overall it was way too bright to be staring at for long periods of time. And oh, cat just came to visit me. So I love this monitor. Definitely check it out if you're looking for a new monitor. The link's in the description. I'll talk to you soon. Y'all have a good one. Oh, but I almost forgot. I did announce it on my Instagram yesterday. The winner for the previous LED lamp by Aukey, the touch lamp that I mentioned, is Astro. Astro, you have about 24-48 hours. Reach out to me on Instagram so that we can complete the verification and get your mailing info, and I'll get that out to you. Once again, congratulations. And I'll talk to everybody soon. Have a good one. Later. Cat, what do you want? What do you want for my life?